I'm also going to discuss an EU nationality without physically spending much time in the EU. And this is one of the best passports in the world. So a lot of people are desperate for a second citizenship. They want a second nationality, and time is money. So you want to save time. You want to quickly get a second citizenship so you can use the second nationality to move on in life, right? Maybe you want to strike the residency of your choice on the right second passport. So you're not only jacking up the strength of your second nationality, but you're obviously getting privacy and protection in the bargain. A lot of people want to diversify their cash. They want to move their cash legally in the place of residency, and not everyone. And this really depends on where you're coming from, but not everyone is comfortable using their home country, or let's say exposing their home country nationality to then obviously move their funds. That's the whole point, right? You're trying to disconnect things legally. So you have a separate life. You have a protected life outside. Now, there are multiple options to quickly acquire a citizenship. Now, some options are marketed, this fake marketing. They market them real quick, and nothing really works real quick, and you spend a lot of time. So I'm going to discuss all the available citizenships that you can get quickly. And when I say quickly, they range from anywhere from 30 days or less than 30 days in certain cases to a few years. Now, depending upon the strength of passport, I'm also going to discuss an EU option, a EU citizenship, a paper residency that leads to an EU citizenship. That's going to be on the second half. But I first wanted to start off with the order of speed. Quickest first, followed by the sequence. Right? Before we deep dive into this exciting topic, please do me a favor, check your subscription. And if you aren't yet subscribed, take a moment and turn it on. It really helps me get you breaking news on time. It really impacts this channel. It helps us grow. And I'll really appreciate if you could turn on that subscription. All right, let's deep dive into it. Now, first, let me quickly get the one that I have been constantly talking about is the 25 to 30 day citizenship, which is the CPLP and ECOWAS option. The passport is green or blue based on the version that you're getting, biometric versus non-biometric. It all depends. But that is the fastest citizenship. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to point out is a citizenship by exception in 2025 is, in my opinion, far better than citizenship by investment for privacy and personal data protection reasons. Because when these programs are set up, there's a separate mechanism or a procedure that is in place. It has to take into account a lot of Western principles. So in order to be more private or secure or protected, a lot of high net worth individuals prefer a citizenship by exception procedure. There's a lot of flexibility and a lot of negotiation under certain aspects. So that is something that a lot of investors prefer. Now, what is the price of the CPLP ECOWAS nationality? The price is under 100K USD. That's all I can share. And I feel this is more private or discreet or legally discreet as compared to some other busted and tainted options. So not everyone is comfortable with a canned CBI. In that case, then CBE is more preferred. It's more exotic. It's more interesting. There's also such options in Serbia. All right, so the second category on this list is the African category. So I'm going to discuss this by Africa, Caribbean, and so on and so forth. And as I said, I'm also going to discuss an EU nationality without physically spending much time in the EU. And this is one of the best passports in the world. So that's in the second half. But let's roll back and talk about the three African that have cropped up. Sierra Leone is, in my opinion, the least preferred. I have not seen much demand for this. I don't even see a reason why someone would go for Sierra Leone citizenship at the price point, right? So 140K. I think they launched this when the other competitors hadn't come out with their programs. So I think the price is out of sync with the market. I don't see many takers, or at least for me, it hasn't been a program in demand at all. I would personally avoid this program at this price point. But Sierra Leone gets you ECOWAS, some utility there. Price really does not make sense. The second one on this list is a recent addition, is the Sao Tome and Principe. Now here the price somewhat would make sense. Single applicant 90K, for a family of 4, 95K. So yes, the price might be okay. It's not bad, it's okay. What do you get with this? So instead of the ECOWAS with Sierra Leone, here you're talking about a technicality, CPLP. Now, CPLP is a lot in demand, but I particularly would not like the combination of a CPLP and a CBI. CBIs are in spotlights, and that's the reason why a citizenship by exception is so much more preferred in 2025 as compared to citizenship by investment. And if you have missed my coverage on this, what are the key differences and why a lot of people actually go for the citizenship by exception, if you've missed that video, you can check that over here. I've talked about this in detail, but let's come back to Sao Tome and Principe. Decent program. What could this be used for? Well, it does have some visa-free access, so you could strike additional residencies. So that could be a technical use case of Sao Tome and Principe. The third one is not yet live, but it's hit the headlines. It's the Botswana CBI. Now, they really played a good marketing game with this. 75K is not the real price. They've given a range between 75K and 90K. So let's say they launch this close to 90 to that 100 mark, then you add all the service fees. So in my opinion, practically speaking, I see this program somewhere close to the Sao Tome and Principe. It may compete with that program. Yes, they wanted to create a buzz, so they said 75K, but they set a range. So I'm thinking higher end of the range, plus service fees, so close to the 100K mark. And the biggest appeal of Botswana is the safety. Now, in the African region, a lot of countries may not be necessarily safe, right? Physically safe to reside. Botswana does offer the stability and the safety that one would look for. So although the passport doesn't have much access, it's one of the weakest and the poorest passports that you can find. But what I really like about this is the safety that you get. So if shit hits the fan, if you wanted to physically spend a few days, maybe a month in a country, then Botswana can technically be utilized, although there are 100% remote residencies that you can strike on any passport where you would rather want to be. Theoretically, the safety aspect makes sense. Practically, I don't think someone would want to prefer to go and live in Botswana, especially if they have never actually lived in that country. Now, the next on the list is the Caribbean, and there are 5 options. I'm not going to dig deep into all 5. They're all pretty similar. The price is around 200 to 250K. The best program out of these 5, and with us, we are able to strike this in 4 to 5 months legally, because our direct liaison specializes in real estate deals in Grenada, and not a lot of people want to donate stuff. They would rather go for a real estate and then apply for this program. So you want to find the best real estate deal, and that's where we specialize in Grenada with the Grenada program. In 4 to 6 months you can get this. Who is this good for? A lot of people still want to have the Schengen access, the EU access. That really plays at the back of their mind. Although there'll be questions with any Caribbean citizenships out there, could be questions at the border, especially if you're traveling to the Schengen zone with a Caribbean passport. Of course, it's not going to be rosy. They're not going to be super excited to see your passport. They're going to have questions. But Grenada, I think, shines out of the 5. So I would give that an edge. And at any point in time, right, while I'm discussing any of these options, if you are interested in starting any program, you can always click the link. We can have a quick discussion and then get you started with 1 or 2 programs of your choice. And we can even combine programs. We do have a special where we are offering 100% remote residency with one of our programs. The 4th on the list is the Turkey CBI. Now, Turkey has 2 options of acquiring. One is through the bank deposit of 500K. This, I feel, is not relevant anymore because they have removed all the safeguards that they had in place, right? So now the lira is gone for a toss. It's not a good option for most people. The property purchase, in my opinion, has been a big headache because it's not closely coupled or tied to the citizenship program, right? You first buy the property. There's a lot of fluctuations that can happen. The lira goes up and down every single day. So by the time you do the conversion, by the time you see the property, by the time you make the purchase, things could have gone crazy. And let's say somehow you find the property of your choice and you make the deal and it does qualify, then you have to apply for residency and then you apply for your nationality. And I've seen a couple of applicants not getting the citizenship despite having purchased the property and no reasons given, right? It's up to their discretion. So that's the big disadvantage. I feel the property purchase is not baked into or not closely tied or coupled with the citizenship. So the property purchase is standalone on the side. then you apply and then they decide. So that's a bit chaotic. I like programs where the property is connected to the citizenship. You at least get some sort of a soft approval. You've gone through the due diligence and then you're clear to make the purchase, the property purchase. Like in the case of Grenada, you can purchase, you can get the approval, do the purchase, make sure everything is qualified, and also get an assurance that you're going to get the citizenship before you make the property purchase. That is missing with Turkey, and that's why I don't like the Turkish CBI program through real estate anymore. And things have gotten super strict with Turkey. In fact, the opposition is demanding that the investor-based citizenship should be looked at or terminated and stuff like that. So there's a lot of chaos and confusion with that region. So I would definitely avoid that if I'm looking for a certain citizenship at the end. If the objective is to collect a property in Turkey, then that's a different story. Then that could be okay. You could take the gamble, and if you get the citizenship, it's a good thing. If you don't get the citizenship, then that's fine. Now the fifth option is the Egypt CBI. And Egypt is like Turkey, where you purchase the property 300K, and here you have an advantage compared to Turkey. Here the property is tied to the citizenship process. So you initially clear the due diligence, get the clearance to purchase the property, then make the investment, get the property, and then you obviously get the final approval and your citizenship. The biggest disadvantage of Egypt, in my opinion, is that they ask you for 5 years of travel history. I feel such programs shouldn't unnecessarily ask for too much information. In my opinion, that does not make any sense. I personally wouldn't want to provide 5 years of travel history to anyone. That defeats the whole purpose of keeping things private, keeping things separate, layering your solutions. So in that sense, I don't prefer the Egyptian program as much. And the time frame to citizenship varies. It's not as excruciating as Turkey. Turkey can run up to a couple of years, right, for the whole process, from property purchase to the due diligence to any questions that they might have to the president actually signing your application. So the whole thing could take up to 2 years. In Egypt, let's say a year and a half, you should be able to get it. Some people get it sooner. Now, what are some of the miscellaneous citizenships before we jump to the EU region? Now, there are a couple of options which are not popular at all, and we don't even know if anyone has really applied to those citizenships. Maybe a couple of people here and there, but obviously you're not seeing any YouTubers flashing these passports. Is the Jordanian CBI at $1 million. For passport, $1 million is too high of a price. And then the El Salvador CBI, again $1 million, does not make any sense in my opinion. At the most, at the higher end, this should have been 200K, not more than that. At $1 million, absolutely no takers in my opinion. Now finally, the most important topic, let's come to the EU citizenship, because a lot of people want to have an EU nationality, an EU passport without spending much of physical time. There were only 2 options in the EU that were possible with investor route, and that was the Malta citizenship in a year technically, but practically it took up to 2 years to get the Maltese passport. That program unfortunately this year has ended. So yes, you don't get an EU citizenship anymore in 2 years, even through investment. But $1.5 million wasn't a bad deal for a lot of people. So they did qualify and they did get the Malta passport. But unfortunately, some investors have lost out on this opportunity. And in future, no one can apply for this program because they have taken away that option. What's left is in 5 years, and it's the Portugal golden visa that leads to citizenship. A physical presence is only 7 days, so not bad. A lot of people, and this is one of our most popular programs because you're only looking at committing 325K euros, and a lot of investors actually want to move that much money out of their home country to diversify. So you're nicely diversifying it in Europe, keeping it in euros. A lot of people are trying to move money out of the USD into a different currency. So euro is a stable currency, and then you keep this for 5 years. You apply for that EU nationality, you get back the 325, you get back 50,000 euros in profit. So you're actually making money to do this. And 5 years is not a bad time frame to earn that EU nationality. And this is the only option really in the EU if you're looking for flexible residency. So what is the main advantages? The main advantage is that you're going to get all the money back. And the second big advantage is that you don't have to physically reside in the country or be a tax resident. So without being a tax resident, just doing the 7 days a year, you can satisfy your residency for this golden visa and for the citizenship, and finally you can naturalize in Portugal. Now there's a separate interesting program in Latvia. This is not for most people. Most people will prefer Portugal, but if you are interested in Latvia, the physical residency can be obtained in just 15 days. If you are interested, you can hop onto this video. This talks about this entire program in a lot of detail.